Hey guys, how's it going? So I took the plunge and I bought myself an Alexa 35. But I had to be honest, the more I shot with this camera, the more I wasn't loving the image that was coming straight out of it. Now I have to be specific. It was only in regards to the color. Everything else about this camera and this sensor is a clear objective improvement over the Mini. The increased resolution, the textures, the cleaner signal. I would say this thing is about as clean 1280 1600 ISO as the Mini is at 800. So you could reliably use 1280 as the native ISO on this easily without any noise issues. And just a bit of trivia, at 1280 ISO, this thing has 10 stops of dynamic range over middle gray. Okay, to give you some context, the entire dynamic range of the Sony Venice 2 is 12 stops. It was reliably recently measured by CNED as having actually just under 12 stops. And that this has 10 just in the highlights and then 7 underneath middle gray in the shadows. So it's absurd. And that brings me to the final feature about this camera that I adore and is a clear improvement, and it's the dynamic range. It is in a league of its own. It has to be seen to be believed. This thing, it doesn't clip unless you point it directly at the sun or maybe a light fixture. It's like bringing a bazooka to a knife fight. That's what I've been saying lately. The feeling of empowerment and liberation you have when shooting on this thing is out of this world. And it kind of ruins every other camera for you, to be honest. It's very hard to come back from. You just never want to leave. So yeah, absolutely love the camera. It's an incredible feat of engineering. But I had to be honest, the more I shot with it, the more I was finding myself missing the color of my Alexa Mini. I wanted everything else from this, but I wanted the color from this. Because what we have to understand is the looks straight out of these cameras is probably more different than you realize. And I haven't seen this discussed much online, but unless you really sit down and analyze and study the two side by side, shooting the same footage, it's hard to figure out exactly what it is that's changed. But that's what I've done, and that's what we're going to look at today. And it was quite a lot more different than I probably expected. Now, I'm not criticizing, I'm not saying the reveal color science is bad. I think it's also probably an incredible feat of engineering, and Arri has pivoted from a filmic image with the older Alexas to more of an accurate image, and that's totally valid. There's a strong argument to be made that was probably the right choice moving forward. But as an alternative, I wanted to be able to get the best of both worlds. And so what I've done is, after sitting them next to each other side by side, I built a LUT that gives me the color of the Alexa Mini for my Alexa 35. And the moment that I started using that LUT on this camera, it became my favorite camera instantly. It's a shooting experience unlike anything else I've ever had. And the results are really, really nice. So I could tell you all about it, or I could show you. So in a moment, we're gonna look at some test footage, and you can be the judge for yourself. But yeah, if you are like me and you upgraded from an old Alexa to the 35, and you kind of like, I don't know if it's just me, but it's a big departure. You're not crazy. You're not alone. I haven't really seen much online about this from this point of view, which is like, maybe this camera's color doesn't align with my taste so much. So maybe I think this might be the first video of its kind. So let's look at some test footage, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so right off the bat here, you can see we have the Alexa Mini and the 35, and you're probably wondering, what is he talking about? They almost look identical. Well, that's the point. This is the Alexa 35 with my Mini Emulation LUT. So we're going to quickly have a look at this. We're going to have a look at the LUT and how close the LUT brings the two cameras together. And then in the second part, we're going to look at how different they were to begin with. So a brief overview. This is how I build the LUT. I shoot a couple of days with my Alexa Mini and my 35 side by side using matching Sigma 18-35 lenses. I don't use any ND filters, no filtration, just pure light straight in on the sensor, controlling exposure with the lens T-stop or the shutter angle in camera. I shoot about 70 to 80 setups over the course of a few days. Every setup I shoot 2 stops overexposed, 2 stops underexposed, and dead on exposure. I'm getting everything from focusing on skin tones, every color under the rainbow basically, and every shot is shot with color charts. I may make another video on this if I get time, or I go into more detail, but for this we're just going to keep it sort of bird's eye view. So we're going to look at just quickly, specifically a handful of shots and talk about these different setups and that I find particularly instructive. So this is my studio setup. This is important for skin tones. We've got a daylight key here with a big softbox, and then we've got an Astera tube blasting tungsten light into my wife's arm. This is to track how the cameras handle, how the sensors respond to mixed lighting. The Mini always handles mixed lighting very well. If you've shot with it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I like to say, how cats always land on their feet. I find like the Alexa skin tones always land on their feet. They always land where you want them. It's just brilliant the way that Ari developed the color. Yeah, I just, it's not just a matter of like, I shot 3 shots in a perfectly lit scene and now I can match cameras. It's like I really am taking the cameras, each sensor through its paces to map out the color responses in a ton of different, throwing in a ton of different variables. So you can notice, for example, we're going to look at a 2 stops underexposed shot of a similar setup here. Notice the color of the lamp. It's a good example. Now, as we underexpose, the colors change and it becomes more of an orange amber when underexposed. Tracking all of that, tracking the way the skin tones change when underexposed. This greeny blue top, this orange here. With the Alexa Mini, there is a non-linear color response. So hues drift and shift and curl depending on different variables, and that's all being tracked in the LUT. Moving along, we've got a nice just interior daylight scene. This is a good example where I use kids' toys. So kids' toys are a fantastic reference point when building these LUTs because they're often very, very bold and saturated colors, and often they're even unusual versions. So you can see like there's different yellows here. Tweety, this thing here. I've got the yellows in the color chart, but these kids' toys are fantastic. This bluey green here is like a dull blue green, which you probably wouldn't encounter in real life very often, but you find it in this kids' toy. So I love throwing as many kids' toys as I can in the back of shots, you'll notice. Greenery, very important to get actual greenery as well as just the green on color charts. These are a lot more kind of static and narrow in their kind of hues. You get a much broader splash of green on the vector scope and on the sensor when you actually shoot greenery, whether it be grass, trees, bluey greens, yellowy greens, and everything in between. The actual light reflecting and refracting off of the grass gives you a lot more color information, so it's important to get a ton of that. Digital SG, just a more sort of not high resolution, but just many more colors, a better reference than just the classic SG alone. So I get a ton of shots of that. And then blue, another very important thing is get tons of sky, different exposures. And you want to shoot on days like this where you've got this kind of cloud cover. You just get a lot of gradations between the deep blue and then the white and everything in between. And that's really informative and instructive when looking for color information. So that's a little intro done. So we're going to get into now Alexa 35 footage. Now these shots are clones of each other, but we're going to look at my Alexa Mini Emulation LUT on the left and obviously the 35 official LUT on the right. And we're going to look at how different the color is in more detail between these cameras. So right off the bat, a couple of things you're going to notice across all the clips we look at. The global saturation is lower on the Alexa 35 color. Now, obviously, there's more to saturation, in color science than just dialing up a knob. But I'm just talking, and we're going to get into that. But we're just talking from a global point of view, a simplistic point of view. Everything is less saturated on the right than the left. Doesn't matter what we look at. The other thing is, just look at this wood, the rendering of this timber compared to the wood here. I love the way the Mini has this film-like rendering of wood, this dense, rich, kind of complex tone. This also carries over to the skin tones. Now here we're going to look at the colors here. So this book, obviously it's a kid's book, it is very colorful. I feel like the Alexa Mini captures that better than the Alexa 35 to my eye. I've got an anecdote that kind of relates to this. A couple of years ago, I was trying to make an emulation LUT for my FS7 that looked like my Amira. And I was shooting with both cameras at this beautiful sunset. There had just been a storm and the sun had come out just at the right time. And it was like these complex, rich blues and oranges and pinks, and it was a really glorious sunset. And I remember at that point thinking I'd finished my FS7 LUT. I was like, I've finally done it, and I couldn't wait to get home because I'd never filmed something like that with both my cameras at the same time. So I get home and I look at the footage, and the Amira had not only captured the beauty of the sunset, it even seemed to enhance it and add a little bit of extra special, secret sauce. And it like made it look even prettier than it was on the day. And then I remember thinking, this is going to be the ultimate test. I looked at my FS7 footage and there was just so much missing. And it wasn't just as simple as saying it's less saturated or it's more saturated. There was a complexity in the color, which we're going to examine more in detail as we go through. But that complexity, I think, Arri, they came up with that from studying film, and you'll notice it all through this presentation. Now, I'm not saying that my LX35 reminds me of my FS7, but there is something that I've always, I always trusted my Arri cameras in the past to at least capture, if not enhance, reality. And I feel like I don't trust the LX35 with its official LUT to do that. It didn't even capture reality for me in this footage, let alone enhance it. And there's something less dimensional about the color rendering here to my eye. We're going to talk about that more as we move forward. So let's look specifically at the shadow saturation. So you notice here with the Alexa Mini, like the contrast falls off gently, the color falls off gently into the shadows. Here it's like more of an abrupt fall off contrast wise, but also with the color, it's like it falls into black very quickly. And this kind of salmon top is very desaturated. Her hand here is like, her arm here is like charcoal in terms of saturation and tone. Same with his skin here, it's like very desaturated. And her skin, just very, almost like black and white. It's almost like a bleach bypass look. Whereas on the Mini here, you just see this really natural fall off into the blacks. Here is a good example of kind of a mixed lighting setup, where you see that it's like a tungsten key. It's obviously shot at daytime, but like the tungsten light hits her face here with the Mini color. It's like yellowy, orange, then red. Like it falls off, and the hues are literally kind of wandering and drifting. They're not staying linear. On the right here, you see this kind of greenish, pale skin tone, and it's basically one hue, or a very narrow band of hues that make up the skin, and it's just what varies is the luminance and the saturation. But here you got luminance, saturation, and the hues are changing as they all interact with each other in a really filmic way. Same with this leather here, as opposed to this leather. So like one thing to note is it's not just like the Mini has more color in the sense of saturation. It's also like it has more colors, like in terms of hues. Like there are more hues in this skin tone than there are here. And it really reminds me of film. And she looks a lot more flattering and healthy here. And I don't find it overbearing either. I don't find it too saturated, too complex. I find it really beautiful. So we'll move into another scene here. Just looking at the difference between the lamps, quite stark. Skin tones again. Same here with the skin tone. And then here we see again the colors here. There are more colors here, as well as more color here. And as we move forward, the skin saturation, it doesn't look natural to me. Here it's like it's a very natural skin tone, even in the shadows. One thing with my Alexa Mini is I was always very confident underexposing it because of the contrast and the saturation. But here you see her arm, it looks on the 35 almost like charcoal, like greeny grey. And here, like I said, yes, it's less saturated, but it still looks natural to me. And I just find, again, the complexity. There's more dimensionality in the colors I find on the Alexa Mini. Right off the bat, no grading, nothing, just the LUT. So here we're going to look at things are going to take a turn here. We're going to look at tungsten lighting. Now, this is where the difference between the two LUTs become most stark. There are going to be some shots as we move forward that are kind of subtly like, oh, they look kind of similar. But here, this is where things really take a turn. They really diverge. So I shot this around 4500 or 5000, I can't remember, a Kelvin, which I tend to shoot tungsten scenes in because I like the warmth. I like capturing the warmth of a scene like this. Again, you're seeing less hues, right? You're seeing this skin tone is all the same. The skin tones are all in a very narrow band of colors. There's not even much yellow hitting this white wall. It's not even really picking up. It's, you know, I didn't shoot this 3200. I shot it, like I said, around 5000. So you'd expect the walls to be yellow like they are here, but they're really white. So pay attention here to, again, the yellow reflection of the tungsten lamp. Skin tones, again, yellowy orange, and then they fall as the saturation and luminance changes, the hues change as well in this non-linear way, and you get this beautiful orangey red fall off in the shadows. Same here, yellow, yellow, red, red. Look at the face here. The shadow of her face is like, there's almost no color information. There's almost no color in this entire, on the right here at all. Like the hue doesn't change, but the saturation and the luminance do. You know, I think Arri are proud of this. They talk about this, and it may well be something to be proud of technically, that they talk about the color tracking is much better with reveal than the old color, where the color will stay the same when it's close to black, through the mids, all the way to white. The colors track in a very linear fashion. But I like the way the colors shift, and you know, it's not at random, it's in a very filmic way. And I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So we're going to look at some actual film. This is from the film Midnight in Paris. If you haven't seen it, you've got to check it out. It's one of the most beautiful films in terms of color I've seen in a very long time. We got all these shots. This is shot in Kodak Vision 3. All these shots are shot in a tungsten scenario, tungsten dominant scene. And you can see the same effect as the same phenomenon that Arri built in the original Alexa color science. Orangey yellow key light, and as it falls off, it turns red. Again, it adds a dimensionality. I feel like I could reach in and grab it. There's more. It's more three-dimensional than the Alexa 35. Here you've got, again, the same thing going on. Here's a great example. You see the light bouncing off his hand. It's literally yellow. The same skin underneath in the shadow goes orangey red. See, like that, if you take that away, it blandifies the whole image. But having that just accentuates and accents the shadows. His lips pop. Everything pops that you want to pop. Oh, I'm just going back. Like the wood here. Look at this wood. This rich red, deep, dense mahogany wood, which the Alexa, again, captures so well. They must have really studied Kodak Vision 3, I think, when they were making their original Alexa. Here's another example. Another great example here. Here again, here as well. It's not all the same color, and I like that. Same here, it's just beautiful. So flattering, just such a beautiful way to render skin. So coming back to the Alexa 35, you see this phenomenon rendered here in the LUT, where you've got this rim light, this tungsten rim light here behind my wife, my boys here, and it goes from a yellow to more of an orange. You've got the red in his ears of the yellow rim light, the yellow rim light arm, and the orange. The yellow is captured on the walls. There's just more color. Look at the red on the book, and then look at this dark, dull red. Look at the skin. It's all the same color with just, again, the hue is linear. It's staying the same. Saturation, the luminance is changing. And again, there may be colorists that are watching this going, yes, but that's great because of this and because of that, because we love the control it affords us, and that's fine. That's fine. It's just, I like this. I think it just adds dimensionality. You could probably create a drinking game and have a drink every time I say the word dimensionality. Just quickly here, says exterior daylight scene. We've got grass. Obviously the color is very consistent. It's probably the exact same hue. And this is just lighter and that's darker. Whereas on the Alexa Mini, you've got the yellow or green with the sun reflecting. And then kind of a blue or green in the shadows. But I like that. I like, again, the color kind of migrating. Skin tones, obviously more saturated as we've discussed, but also we've got the pink, we've got the yellow, we've got the orange, we've got a bit of red, we've got, again, we've got that complexity there. You can see it here as well. See it here as well. This is a great example of both the wood and the skin tones here with our actor. Look at this. And again, to my eye, this is closer to what the door actually looks like. Just from an accuracy point of view, I think that's a lot closer to what the door looks like. This yellowy brown is not what the door looks like. And the skin tone has, again, that same pattern of more hues, more saturation, but never overbearing. Just filmic and flattering. Same again here. And just a note actually on this is just a cool little aside. Take a break from the color for a second. The dynamic range here is insane. We're shooting this in like late afternoon. She's in the shadow of this tree, and the bright sky behind us isn't even close to clipping. It's again just this dynamic range, like I was saying earlier, is just absurd. Okay, here we have an internal daylight scene. I just want you to focus. You're seeing a lot of the same stuff, but I just want you to focus on the guitar here. I think it illustrates the color differences again in a kind of a unique way. There. So look at the transition from this deep amber orange into this red, into this brown, and that beautiful smooth transition. And then here it's this yellow, this kind of yellowy orange, and then black. It's like there's almost no transition. And I'm telling you, the guitar in real life looks more like that. But again, it's kind of that. The Alexa enhances it, what it really looks like. Yep, same thing here. This terracotta kind of fabric here is just really lovely. Rendered lovelily. Rendered really well. Here we have available light was all greenish because there's a lot of greenery outside. So this is what I find with the Alexa 35. It often, the skin's either too pink or it's too green for my taste. Here it's too green because it's capturing this green light. The Alexa, like I said, like a cat always lands on its feet. The Alexa skin tones here absorb that green light and kind of wrestle it back, the skin tones back into more of an orangey red space here. Almost like it's alive. This non-linearity is like combating the green. And in this case, yeah, you actually see this is redder and pinker than the Alexa 35. So again, it's the nuances of the differences are quite complex. You have to really spend a lot of time comparing them to see. And I think on the last clip here, so I just want to note the reflection on his face is interesting. And even when it's like he's like super close to the iPad, it picks up. The Alexa 35 is barely picking it up, and the Mini picks that up. It's just something interesting I noticed, a little quirk. Make of that what you will, but yeah. So that is the last clip, guys. Thanks heaps for watching. I'm going to wrap this up. I've been yapping on for long enough. So we've seen the differences between the legacy and the new reveal color science. And just a note on the reveal color science. Again, at the beginning I said it's not that I'm criticizing it as being bad. I think it's a completely different idea to what Ari did in the past. It seems, from what I can garner from interviews and press release and marketing material, that Ari is trying to create more of a neutral, stable, level platform for colorists to work with. And I think in that case, they've probably done it. They're not trying to back you into a corner with like a filmic look like they did with the old Alexa. So it's almost apples and oranges in comparing them. They're not trying to do the same thing. But all I wanted to do was, I know the look I want. It's this. It's the old look they had from my personal subjective tastes. So I just wanted to like be able to toggle that back on, and unfortunately Ari didn't give us a button to toggle reveal new or old color science. So that's a problem I solved for myself, and I just thought some of you might be interested. And if you do feel like me, or if you just want an alternative, I'm going to make the LUT available in a link below, which you can pick up. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching again. Subscribe, etc. And I will catch you in the next one. Ciao. Bye.